Okay. Boker Tov. Today's daf is daf Kuf Tes Vav in Baba Kama. Kuf Tes Vav. From the top of the page, the third line. Itmar. Let's understand what were the Mishnah talking about. There's something called Takana Sashuk. If you buy something in the market and you had no reason to believe that it was stolen goods, then afterwards the owner shows up. It's not your fault. You had no reason to believe it was stolen. You didn't buy it from a guy. You bought it from apparently a legitimate operation. So the deal is the special takana that the rabbi said. Technically, now we're talking about even before Yush, the guy hadn't given up, right? The guy hadn't given up. So what do? The owner has to pay you for the item. The owner has to pay you because you did it legitimately. Now it's his item. You have to give it back. You have to give it back, but you didn't know it was stolen. So the rabbis made something called takana sashuk if you didn't know about it, because you bought this item, you didn't know it was stolen. You know what? The owner still has to pay you for it in order to give it back, even though technically he could just take it back. It's my item. I never gave up on it. It was stolen. You bought stolen goods. You got to give it back. I don't know what the common law thing is. Common law probably you have to give back without, but that was without the takana. The rabbis made a takana because otherwise nobody's going to buy anything. How do I know if it's not stolen? Go prove that it's not stolen. So the rabbis made a takana. When you collect it, you have to, if you're the owner, you have to pay the guy for it. However, now the Gemara is going to deal with a different case. What happens if in that case they found the ganaf? Itmar, ganav umachar, the ganaf stole something from a balabais, from an owner, and he sold it. And he sold it. Now there are three parties here. There's the owner, the ganaf, because he was identified, and the purchaser, the lokeach. What do? Ravish made Rav Meir hadin imarishon. The owner goes to the ganaf. The owner goes to the ganaf because the ganaf is. This we say you made a takana that you have to pay for it. What do you have to pay for? We know the ganaf is. He's got to go after the ganaf. If he wants to take it back. From the Rashi explains the top Rashi. He doesn't have to go. He can't demand that the lokeach give it back to him without being reimbursed. He can't demand that. In other words, if he wants to take it from him, he's got to pay for it. It's not the the ganaf is. You know what? Rav says, this is Rav Meir Shapiro. He goes after the ganaf, meaning that he can't demand that the purchaser who has it now, give it back to him without payment, but rather he's got to go after the ganaf because the ganaf stole from him. So he says, it doesn't say you got to give it back to me for nothing and you go after the ganaf. No. The owner has to go after the ganaf because the ganaf is recognized. So you don't say, so effectively over here you're saying that who's got the purchaser has it right now, right? But the owner is taking it back. So you don't say, you don't say that, but rather you still say it's like you say takana sashuk too. The owner, the lokeach has to be reimbursed. The lokeach will be reimbursed, and the owner has to go after the ganaf to get his money back from the ganaf. Rabbi Yochanan Mishmei, Rabbi Yanai Amar Hadin Masheni. No, as long as there was no yish yet, he hasn't given up yet. You can go after the purchaser and tell the purchaser, no, you have to pay him back. This that we say that the purchaser, that kanas hashuk, that the purchaser is entitled to his money because he didn't know that it was, that's when you don't know who the ganaf is. Rashi says, Dino shel balabais in the third line of Rashi. Dino shel balabais imalokechu v'yotzi menu keilav b'chinam. He says, listen, I don't have to pay you. This I don't have to pay you. That the kanas hashuk is, we didn't know who the ganaf is. You didn't know it's not your fault. You bought it. You didn't know that it was stolen. There we say, but if you know who the ganaf is, too bad. I'm taking it from you. Dino shel balabais imalokech v'yotzi menu keilav b'chinam. In other words, the purchaser has to give it back to him. The purchaser has to go. Now we know who the ganaf is. The purchaser has to go after the ganaf. Purchaser go. I'm taking my item back. I never gave up on it. I'm the owner. Somebody stole it. The ganaf stole it from me. Sold it to you. It's my item. Give me back my item. you want to say, but how are you going to get your money back? Go after the ganef. We know who the ganef is. That's the second opinion. That's Rabbi Yochanan's opinion. Rabbi Yochanan Mishmei Rabbi Yanai. Whereas Rav said, no, the deal still is that the owner has to go after the ganef, and the purchaser is entitled to get his money back. He doesn't have to give up the item without getting paid. In other words, like you say, that Tekanos Shuktiv. Amar Rabbi Yosef, below pligi. There's really no machlokas here between Rav and Rabbi Yochanan. Kanaf Yish, before Yish, Hadin Imasheni. If he hasn't given up yet, then he can go after either. He can go after the second guy too. In other words, he can go after the Lokech and say, listen, you go after the ganef. I'm getting my money. I want my item back. After he's given up, Hadin Marishon. After he's given up already on it, now he can go after the ganef. He's given up on it. The second guy has acquired it effectively. Then in dinner Rishon, you have to go after the Balabayis has to go after the ganef. Lokech doesn't have to give up the item without getting paid. The Tabayis Rav Chisda, they both hold Rav Chisda. We had a few blot back right after the first mission in the parak. Rav Chisda says that if you stole something, Rav Chisda says Gozo, and the owner hasn't given up, and then somebody else came and ate it, like somebody else stole it from the first ganef, or somebody else ate it. The owner can go after either one, because it's before Yish. So before Yish, so now we're saying there's no machlokas. Before Yish, right? Look at Yish at the end of Rasheni. Before Yish, you can even say tell the purchaser, it's listen, I haven't given up on it. It's your problem. You bought it from the ganef, go after him. After Yish at the end of Rishon. Abaya, below please or machlokas and matanas kahuna. Yish dummy. Matanas kahuna. Let's say you have an animal over here, and there's a Kohen who was promised the matanas kuna, zera l'chaim and keva, and there's a stomach. The keva is part of the stomach. Uplease machlos etanan. Amal mission chulin says like this. Amal lo mochor li meya. You tell a man goes to a shochet, a butcher, and he says, sell me the inside of the animal shapara. B'hayu b'matanas, and there were matanas kuna in there. And they'll say there was a designated Kohen who was promised the items here. No sim Kohen. You give a gun ve'emanakol menadamim. Now I say I'm buying the inside of the animal, okay, for $10. I bought all the inside, and now I have to give part of the stomach to the cave, one of the stomachs I have to give to the Kohen. I can't deduct for that because I said I'm buying the whole inside. It's understood that the part that belongs to this Kohen goes to the Kohen. Let's say I bought it though by the pound, by weight. Then no, I want 2 kilo of the stomach of the animal. I want 2 kilo. Then, if part of it, part of what was given to me was the stomach that goes to the Kohen, I can deduct for that because I want 2 kilo, so to speak, net. I want 2 kilo clean. If in the 2 kilo you included the stomach that goes to the Kohen, I can deduct for that. That's only if he weighed it himself. The purchaser weighed the stuff. Then he can if the butcher, if he weighed it out for him, hadin imatabach, the Kohen. In other words, what's the comparison of here? The Kohen is like the owner; he never gave up on it. And the Kohen Why would he be miyayish? He's entitled to get it until he gets it. He's entitled to it. So then, who does the Kohen go after? If let's say this Kohen was designated that he was going to get, everybody agreed that he was going to get the matanas from this animal, both the purchaser and the butcher. The Kohen goes after the tabach because he was the one, so to speak, had to give 2 kilo net to the purchaser, and therefore, if he has a claim, the Kohen would have a claim on the tabach, not on the purchaser. So what do you see over here? You see over here that there is a machlokas because this is before Yish. You said before what? That before Yish everybody be motor Rav Chisda. That before Yish the owner can go after the purchaser or the ganef, right? The Kohen is like the original owner, and we're saying over here that he goes after the tabach who was the first guy. He's like the ganef. He's the first guy in line, not the second guy who bought it from him. So you see over here that Rav says that even before Yish, he says he can only go after the first guy, not the second guy, as if to say that you can only go after the ganef or the first guy who bought it, the first guy who took it from the owner. In this case, the Kohen being the owner, you can only go after the first guy, not the second guy, even though it's before Yish, which shows you that Rav maintains his argument even before Yish. He says you can only go after the first guy, and he can't take it from the second guy unless you pay for it. So the ema af dinim atamach doesn't mean that he can only go after tabach. He can go with either one. In other words, if it's before years, like the coins before years, just like a person who had something stolen from him before years, he goes like Rav Chisda, he can go after the first guy. He can claim it no matter what. If, as we said before, Rav Chisda says that if you stole something from somebody and somebody else stole it from the ganaf or ate it, ganaf, if it was before years, the owner can go after either one. So that's what Rabbi Yosef will say. That he says before years everybody agrees with the Chisda. Then the same I might think matanos going exalts. They're not stolen. Matanos goes because then I never gives up on it, and therefore what? Therefore, what you could only go after, take it from wherever it is. It's now in the hands of the purchaser. Kamash one, you can even go after the tabach. That's the point over here. I might think it can't be stolen. Rashi says, wherever it is, aim at the coin, just take whatever one's Kamashma, and you can go after either one. Okay, so this is the machlokas here between Abaye and Rabbi Yosef. Rabbi Yosef says that Rav and Rabbi Yochanan don't argue. They both agree. Abaye says they do agree. Abaye don't reflect what's the Abaye says that they argue. What's the machlokas? But Rav Chisda, that's a machlokas. If you hold Rav Chisda or not, Rav doesn't hold Rav Chisda. Rav Chisda said that if you stole something from somebody, and then somebody took it from you, stole it from you, or ate it from you, whatever, and it's before Yish, you can go after the owner, can go after either one. Rav says no. You can only go after the ganaf, not after the second guy. If you want to take from the second guy, you have to pay for it, just like the takanas hashuk that we mentioned before. Rav Zvid Omar, Rav Zvid says no. Everybody holds before Yish. Everybody holds of Rav Chisda that you can go after either one. Go after the ganaf or go after the guy who got it from him, the first guy or the second guy. Rav says, what's the machlokes here? Normally we say that when the item is stolen, if there's yish and then shini rishus, then the last purchaser can keep it, because there's two things over here. It's like we said, if you made a shinu in the item, the goslin gets to keep it if he made a change. Also, if there was yish followed by shini rishus, also the last guy gets to keep it. It says over here, what happened was that the yish took place after the shini rishus. The owner did not give up to it until the purchaser already had. In other words, till two levels down, until the ganaf took it, and then he gave it, and then he sold lotech. But no, there was no yish in the hands of the ganaf, and then followed by shin. It's just here's a machlokas. Marsav or Rabbi Yochanan holds yish v'achkach shin rishus kani. If there's yish and then shin rishus, then the second guy acquires it. Shin rishus v'achkach yish lo kani. He doesn't acquire. Therefore, the original owner, the balabayas, can go after the second guy. That's what Rabbi Yochanan says. You go after the second guy. Why? Because he hasn't acquired it yet. It's like Rav Chisda before Yish. Even though there was Yish over here, the Yish after the Shina Rishus does not help. Umar Savaloshan, Rav says it doesn't make any difference. If there's Yish and Shina Rishus or Shina Rishus and Yish, it's all the same. Therefore, you can only go after the first guy, not the second guy. Everybody agrees that that Rav Papa says that. Everybody says it's Lefnei Yish, and everybody holds a Rav Chisda, that he can go after either one. That's not the issue over here. He's definitely giving back the stolen item. Rav Papa says, definitely the stolen item goes right back to the owner, and he could take it from without any payment over here. Again, we're talking about because we know who the ganaf is. Our mission was talking about a case where you don't know the ganaf. The kanas hashuk that there was, if you go to the shuk and you buy something, and then the owner says, hey, the owner shows up and says, that's my item, and he proves it, whatever he has proof, or he was claiming, like the mission said, that he was screaming that it was stolen. There were stolen items. You didn't know about it. But you're entitled to get paid. You, the purchaser, are entitled to get paid, because otherwise nobody will do business. Nobody will know if anything is, how can you prove something is stolen or not stolen? So because of business. But over here where you know who the ganaf is, that's the issue. So Rav Papa says, in other words, what happened over here? An item was stolen, and then it was sold. And the question is, you found the ganaf, who can the owner go after? Can he go after, Rav said he goes after the ganaf, and he can't go after the purchaser. Why? Because the purchaser is entitled to get paid if you're gonna take the item from him, and therefore you can go after. If you're going to take from him, you'd have to pay. So even though you know who it is, it's lower. You don't say that the lokeach has to deal with the owner. The owner has to deal with the ganaf. And Rabbi Yochanan said no. He could take his item for nothing and not. So that was Machal. Says no. the item itself definitely goes back without any payment. The question is there takanas hashuk over here or not? Meaning, Rav Shapiro, Adin Imarishon. What does that mean? Dina de lokeach. We don't mean dinner. We're not talking about, until now we've been talking about, is the balabayas. Does the balabayas job to go after the gazlan, the ganef? Is it his job to go after the ganef? Or is his job to go after the purchaser? He could take it from the purchaser without paying anything when you know who the ganef is. Now we're saying, no. Everybody agrees that the item has to go back without payment to the owner. The question is, who does lokeach go after? I didn't marishon, didn't lokeach lish go susan meganef. The lokeach has to go after the ganef. But lo about the kanas shuk. You don't say that, well, the owner has to pay him, the owner of the item has to pay him because otherwise there won't be any business and the owner has to pay for his item and get it back. You don't say that. What does that mean? The lokeach has to give it back to the balabayas basically, and then he has to go claim money from the bias. After he paid it back. Rashi explains the difference between regular takanas hashuk and not over here, just in terms of he can't argue that he's not a bal dvarim. That's the issue over here. It says more of a savrav loss about takanas hashuk. So Rav's saying that there is no takanas hashuk. What's again the takanas hashuk? That the purchaser who didn't know that originally it was stolen doesn't have to give back his item without getting paid first. So now we're saying that everybody says the item itself definitely goes back to the owner immediately. The question is, who does lokeach go after? Does he go after the ganef who he bought it from, who he gave him the money, or does he go after the owner? And then the owner would eventually have to go back to the ganef. It's more of a sub-Rav loss about the shuk. So Rabbi Yochanan says they made it to shuk, and Rav doesn't hold it. Rav doesn't hold the shuk. While Rav Huna tamid Rav. Huna's a Talmud Rav. Chanan Bisha. Chanan was a wicked man. Ganef, he was a ganef glima. He stole a shirt, let's say. Vizavna and sold it. Also came for Rav Huna. Omer lehu gavra. What did Rav Huna say to the owner of the shirt, to the Baal Bayis? Zil shari avitcha. Go free your pledge, meaning go pay for it. Go pay for it. So go pay for it means that the kanas hashuk. In other words, you're the owner. If you want it, you got to go back. So you see over here, the Rav does hold the kanas hashuk. How could Rav Papa have said the machlokas here between Rabbi Yochanan and Rav was whether they hold it that the kanas hashuk in this case or not? Right, this case or not, the item definitely goes back. The question is who's lokeach to go after the ganfer, go after the owner. Oh, going after the owner means that the owner has to pay for his item to get it back because of the kanas hashuk. Here you see that he holds up the kanas hashuk. The shiny chanan bisha keeping the lekel shtumim minei kalo hooker ganaf dami. It's different. Chanan bisha Chanan was a wicked man, a tough guy, and since you can't collect from him, he's a tough guy. You wouldn't be able to collect from him. So therefore, it's like lo hooker ganaf dami, and therefore there is the kanas hashuk, just like we saw in the Mishnah. When you don't know who the ganef is, again, what's the case in the Mishnah where you bought an item from somebody, and then the owner comes and claims it, and he's got a valid claim. He's been looking for it. There's proof that it was his, etc. The owner has to pay for it. Has to pay for it, get it back, and the owner has to deal with the ganef if he can find it, but he don't know who the ganef is. So over here, even when you know who the ganef is, since you can't collect from him, it's as if you don't know who the ganef is. And therefore, we said to kanas hashuk there too, and the purchaser is entitled to get his money from the owner. Amar Rava, im ganav meforsamu, if he's a well-known ganav, loss of the kanas hashuk. Meaning, the whole excuse of the kanas hashuk is, if I go to the market and I buy something, I didn't know that it was stolen. So therefore, you do me a favor, and if the owner comes and claims it, he's got to pay me for it. He's got to go after the ganav. So he says, you know what? That's only if the ganav is not well known. But if it's well known, it's like you're certain. Don't buy from him. It's your fault. You shouldn't have bought from him. So im ganav first lost the construct. I have a chanan bisha. Chanan bisha, this that we just talked about. This chanan the wicked, but he was meforsam. Vasabat construct. Rafuna the Talmud Rav set the construct there too. See, and we're saying Rav generally doesn't hold up the kanas hashuk, but that was a special case because it's like look, everybody holds up the kanas hashuk when you don't know who the ganef is, and that was the case. Like as if you don't know the ganef because you can't collect from him. But over here, Chanan Bisha was a well-known ganef, and still we made the construct. So he didn't enforce the Busha. He's well known that he's wicked. Like in Muslim person, he's known that he's wicked, but he's not known as a ganef. You know, some guys are tough, but doesn't mean that he wasn't known as a ganef. Itmar. Let's say this whole deal of the construct is if I purchase something and I couldn't have known that it was stolen, they make a special takana for me, and when the owner comes and collects it, I'm entitled to be paid. I'm entitled to prove how much I paid. Here's the receipt. You got to pay me for it. What happens if somebody stole something and he paid it back with his loan? In other words, the purchaser didn't buy this stolen item from him. The purchaser had lent this money to the guy. He had lent some money a while back. I lent him $100. A month later, when he came to pay it back, he says, "Oh, I got this shirt for you. It's worth $100." Pays him back with that. Would you say over there also, or he owed him money for his outstanding list that he owed him, that he had extended him credit for merchandise or whatever? Lo asabot. There's not a kosher share. What the Amri lo adaiti the hani yavasle. You didn't give him the money for this item. If you give him the money for this item in the shuk, so you say, okay, fine, you couldn't have known that it was stolen. But over here, when you gave him the money before, right, you extended him credit or you had lent him money, something of that sort, and now he brought you this item, you didn't give him that money for this item that you could say, I didn't know that it was stolen. It's a different situation over here. It's not the same. So there's no takana shuk over there. And if he gives you that item, we don't say that the owner has to pay you for it. I lost the construct. What about different cases? What about mashkanta shavi masan, the mayor? Let's say he gave him a mashkam that was worth $200 for a $100 loan. What would you say? Would you say over there, so tikana shuk? So in other words, he said, listen, I'm going to give you give me, here's a collateral. I got a $200 shirt here. Lend me $100. So there he gave the money against that item, and the item was stolen. There is takana shuk there because he couldn't have known it was stolen. What about shava b'shava? What about the same amount? So there's a machlokas here because some say that usually when you get something as collateral, it's got to be worth well more than the loan, right? Because markets can fluctuate a little bit. So he doesn't want to give it to him. You say, listen, I'll give you this item. It's not worth much, not the same. What happens if it's exactly equal? So Meir says lost about the takana shuk because he really he didn't give it to him against that item. He gave it to him because he trusted him. So Marzutra says also takana shuk. Zvina shava b'shava, also a sale. So for the exact value, also about the takana shuk. Shava meya b'masan. Let's say he paid extra. Let's say it was worth a $100 item and he gave him $200. So Sheish Summer lost about the takana shuk because he gave him extra money. Extra money, he didn't do it against that item. So it wasn't. Rabbi Amar also about the takana shuk. B'kulu also about the shuk. There's takana shuk, meaning that if you bought something, you paid for something, you couldn't have known that it was stolen. The rabbis made you a special takana that you're entitled to get paid for it. In all cases, except the case where you didn't even give the money for this item, or against you didn't give the money against a collateral or a pledge of some sort, but rather you gave the money in advance. You lent him money a long time ago, and now he brings you something to pay it back with, or you had given him credit, for merchandise. Then you don't say that's not the takana shuk because it's not like you gave money for that item that you couldn't have known that was stolen.
So it was worth $100.
Mm-hmm.
Then he sells it to another person for $200. Then
we're going to have that case. We're going to come to that in a few minutes. Yeah, we're going to bring down that case. We'll see that case. Good point. We're going to bring it up in a couple of minutes. Okay. Avime Bar Nazi, Hamud Rabina. He was the father. This fellow, Avime Bar Nazi, was the father-in-law of Rabina. Some guy owed him $4. Ganav Glima, the guy who owed him the money, stole a shirt. And he gave it to him the shirt. And now he lent him another $4. Now the question was that shirt against the first $4 or the second $4? Then they finally got it. In other words, he was the guy who stole it, right? He was the guy who stole it. The guy paid back money. Also, they came for Ravina. They came for Amar Kamoy Ganav Upara B'chovo V'loy by Lamesav V'lamide. The first $4, you can't claim against that, right? Because he didn't. He's not entitled to get his money back for that because he lent him that money not for the item. The item was given back later on. The second $4 in the second case, you could say, right, take your money and then return the item, meaning you're entitled to be paid like there is takana shuk for the second $4, because he could say when he gave him the shirt, that's why he gave him the $4. You ever have that? The guy owes you money and then he says, okay, I'm paying you back. Now can I borrow another $4? I'm paying you. That's what he did here effectively. So he said that was as a shirt. Masker of Coin. That's his name, Rav Coin. Vidilma Glima Bahani Zuzi Kamoy Yavanile Ganav Upar Bachovo Ganav Par Bachova Kefo. The first $4 doesn't get, he's not entitled to get that back. Why? Because he lent him the money before he got the item back. But he lent him the money before, and now he's paying it back with the stolen item. So the first Glima Bahani says it Kamoy Yavanile Yavanile Ganav Upar Bachovo Ganav Kefo. You say the first $4, the glima was for the first $4, but he can't be reimbursed for that because he didn't give him the $4 against the shirt. He gave him the $4 way in advance. He lent him that money, and now he's paying back with the shirt. Maybe the last $4, don't say that the last $4 was against the shirt. What happened? Originally, I lent him $4 with nothing, just on trust. Now, a few months later, he gives me a shirt. Well, it's not I didn't give the money against the shirt that you could say Takanas Ashuk. So therefore, it doesn't work. What about the second $4? Is that against the shirt? No. Second $4, just like I believe you the first time, I trust you for the second, and therefore you're not entitled to anything. A Galgal Milsa. The issue came down. The comment of Rav was the greater rabbi. Now Shaw, Ganav Safra. Now here's your case. Now Shaw, somebody from that city, Nasha stole a book. Ganav Safra, the book. So a Narshaw, a guy from Narshaw, that was I guess the name of the place. There are 3 different places. A guy from Narshaw stole a book, right? From the guy from Beichuzoi. These were places in Babel. Sold a book. He sold it to a Papanian, right? But him for $80. Also, the Papanian went no, he sold it. The original owner, I don't know where he was from. I made a mistake. He wasn't the last guy was because there were 3 people involved. The first Ganav was from Narsha. He sold it to a purchaser from Papanoi for $80. Also, the Papanoi went and he sold the guy from Mechuza for $120. So you have a Ganav, right, who sold it for $80, and that guy sold it to somebody else for $120. They found the Ganav. Amar Abayis said, Lezel Marisaf, let the owner come. Now, what does the owner have to do? Takanas Ashuk says, right, that if he hasn't given up on it yet, and there's no way for the first purchaser to know that it was stolen, he's entitled to get his money back. But here we have a first purchaser for 80 and a second purchaser for 120. So he says, Lezel bar Marida Safra, V'yovle bar Mechuza, Ishki Mechuza 80. Give the bar Mechuza guy 80, even though he spent 120, right? Zuzi, V'shakal Safra, and take his book back. Let guy V'shakal Arba, let him get. In other words, let the last guy who spent 120, let him get 80 from the owner. Let him get 80, and he'll get his 80 back. And then let him go back and get 40 from this first purchaser. Let the second purchaser get the difference, the 40, because he laid out 120 from the first purchaser. Maskal Rava, I understand you. If you buy from a Ganav, they give you Takanas. You buy from a Ganav, because you couldn't have known. Boy. So a purchaser who bought from another purchaser certainly shouldn't have been suspicious at all. When you buy from a Ganav, what you might say, well, you should have been suspicious, but you checked out that see what the history of this item is, and see, there you say, well, we'll still make Shuk. It's impossible to always know. You can't know what the pedigree of this item is all the way going back. So, okay, we made it Shuk you. So, boys, if you buy a purchaser who bought from another purchaser, certainly you should make the Shuk. Elam Rava, Lezel Marida Safra, let the owner of the book go. Let him give the last purchaser the whole 120 that he paid, the whole May of Astrom Zuzi. V'shak and take his book back. V'lezel Marida Safra, right? V'lezel Marida Safra, v'lishka abam p'noi v'tim. And now the owner of the book has to go back. The owner of the book, he has to pay the last purchaser the whole 120. Then let him go and take 40 from the Pupanoi guy, who made a profit of 40 on the other guy, made a profit of $40 on a stolen item. Give me back that money. The Tim Nashah, and go back 80 from the Nashah, who was the Ganav himself, who stole it and got 80. The original Ganav himself stole it and made a profit of 80 because his cost was 0. He sold it for 80. And the second guy made a profit of 40. The owner has to go back to the second guy, get his 40 from him, and get the 80 from the Ganav, and he has to pay the second purchaser, the whole thing gets like the kana shuk. That's what the kana. Two guys were on the road. One guy had a barrel or jug of wine. One had a barrel of honey. Honey is worth a lot more. And the barrel of honey cracked. So what did you do? The guy with the wine realized, listen, I'll pour out my wine, and I'll be and he saved the guy with the dvash's money. Let's say the dvash is worth $100, the wine's worth $10. So he says, okay, I'll help him out. Put out my wine, and I say, he can't make a demand and say, pay me for my wine. I lost $10 in wine. So now I'll pay you for your effort. You get $2 an hour. I'll give you $2, right? Schar kli, v'schar pula. Schar kli for using his vessel and his time, etc. Imamar, if the owner of the wine said, I'll save it, but you got to pay me. You got to pay me the value of my pay me for my wine, etc., for my entire loss. Then he's got to give it to him. Maybe he's got to pay him for his wine and for the time, etc., and for the effort to go get more wine, get wine from someplace else. Shataf, similar story. Shataf Nachal Chamoro. Two people were in a river, in a valley, and there was all of a sudden there was a rush of water. And the first guy, both my donkey and your donkey were both at risk of drowning. My donkey was worth a lot less than your donkey. Mine was worth 100, yours worth 200. It was obvious to them. I left my donkey, let him die, let him drown. I saved the other guys because it's worth a lot more. He's only entitled to his effort. Same idea. I'll save yours, but you got to pay me for my donkey. He's got it. In other words, it's not understood automatically that he's going to be reimbursed for his whole loss unless he made a deal up front. Why do you say? Let your honey in the first case. Your honey was gone, right? It was cracked. You were going to lose all your honey. So it was like hefker. I saved it's my own. Right? It's my own. It's like something is lost. It's like I found it in the river. I'm entitled to it. A man was carrying jugs of wine and oil. And he saw that they were about to break. Lo Yomar, he shouldn't say Hareza Truma Umaisra I'll tell you what, I have these barrels. I got a lot of wine and oil at home, and I'll give this will be my truma. Because he knows it's going to be gone, I'll tell you what, this is my truma. It's going to be Jerusalem, but this is the truma. I'm Yotze. I gave truma some maestros, right? We shouldn't say I raised the truma some myself. If he said the Lord McClum, it's meaningless. Why? Because it's like hefker already. Rashi says, since it's going to be lost anyway momentarily, it's a future loss, but it's like it's lost right now. Since it's about to be lost, let's like it's hefker. It's not mine. I can't do anything with it anymore. So the same thing over here. If this guy's dvash was about to be destroyed, why can the owner of the honey say, "I'm just going to pay you for your effort"? No, I could. It's my your dvash was about to be destroyed. I got it from hefker. It's in my barrel now. Why can't I keep it myself? That's different. That's speaking on a case where the tie or the binding of the oil press was still tied up on this item, and therefore we're going to say that in a few minutes in another case. In other words, it wasn't going to be a total loss. Over here in this case is that in the case of the Mishnah, it wasn't all gone. It wasn't like the barrel broke and it's all gone and he's trying to give truma from there. No, it's speaking about in our Mishnah where it was a slow loss. It was just it wasn't a total loss. It wasn't all. Yeah, so right, and therefore it wasn't hefker, right? Rav says it's going to drip out little by little, so it's not hefker. Then it says wait a minute. In the case of the truma, you say you can't do because it's lost. I have a tiny misha babaderach. Most be a man's on the road and he's got some money, but honest connecto, and he sees a violent man about to attack him. You're afraid. Lo yomli shouldn't say Hare Perish Yeshli B'toch Beisi. Again, he wants to give Trumas. He's a Hare Perish Yeshli B'toch Beisi Mechulolam Amos Halalu. The money that I have in my house, let's say of Meiser Sheni or whatever, they're mechul this money, right? And because this money is going to be lost anyway, so this way, he'll get rid of it. The Imamar Dvarv Kayamin, right? So you see, it does work, even if it's about Basach Ma'askining, Shiach Lahatzel. That's different, because it's different in this case, because it's not for sure going to be lost. He could save it with some Ibishach Lahatzel. So if he's allowed to, why shouldn't you say it originally? He said you shouldn't say that. You shouldn't say the payers I have in my house are mechol on this money, right? Why not? The Imam Dvar Kayamin, it's mashma that it's not considered automatically hefker, and what you said does work. He says that's different because you could save it. See, if you could save it, why shouldn't you say that lechatchila? You could only save it with great effort. In other words, maybe run away from the Ghana for whatever it was. You can only save it with great effort, but it's not for sure. It's not a sure loss. Wherever it's for sure loss, you're not allowed to say, I'm giving it for Trumas or Maestros, etc. Levi. Now, a Levi, what does a Levi get? Meiserisha, right? What does he do with his Meiserisha? First thing he has to do is what? Give Trumas Meiser the coin. So here, this is, until then, it's considered Tevel. He's not allowed to eat it. He had 10 barrels of Tevel, meaning Meiserisha and Tevel. Tame, it had been defiled. He saw one of them breaking, or it was exposed. Let's say exposed to it was a liquid. Let's say it was oil or wine, and it was exposed. Let's say to a snake. Omer Hare, you could say Hare Trumas Meiser. I'm giving you this as Trumas Meiser. This one I'll Tesha Chavrasa on the other 9. And as I'm giving Meiser, I'm giving my Trumas Meiser. No, you could do that. You could do that. And lachatchila you're allowed to do it. He says, he says, you could do it. With Shem lo yasakain. By Shem you shouldn't do it, and they have the coin because the coin is going to have a big loss. We'll talk about this. Why with wine is it not such a loss, and with oil it is? We'll see why the Gemara can explain. So again, you see over here that even though there's a loss, you shouldn't say that. He says, Hare Omer. So he says, you said that what? There's a loss, you shouldn't do it. Right, you shouldn't do it. If you did it, it's okay. If it's a for sure loss, the whole thing is gone. You shouldn't do it at all. It's not saying anything. If it's not a for sure loss, you shouldn't. But if you did it, it's okay. But he says even if it's a for sure loss, you shouldn't do it here. You're allowed to do it. It says you got 10 barrels. The lady's got 10 barrels, right, of oil or wine, and he saw that one of them is breaking or it's about to be exposed to snakes. He could say it's Trumas Meiser on the other 9. Shouldn't do it by Shemet. You could do Lechachila. Here again, we're speaking about where it's not a for sure loss, it's just dripping out a little bit. So you're allowed to do it Lechachila. So Bishlam Mishnah is where it's broken. Chazi, I understand if it's broken, it's still okay because it's only dripping out a little bit. So you give it as Truma to the Kohen, and that's fine. And if it eventually it's lost, it's lost. But when you gave it, it wasn't for sure going to be lost because it was dripping out. And if it's exposed to snakes, what are you going to do with it? In other words, if it's now remember this is Truma Tameya, this is Tevel Tameh, and you gave Trumas Meiser from there. So how could you give Trumas Tameh? The Gemara's going to ask that too. Good questions. You're on the ball today, right? Gemara's going to ask that. So Bishlam Mishnishbra, if it's just broken, right? Broken. So I understand, what you can use it for. Meaning it's just dripping out little by little. Rashi says, in other words, if it's just broken, so I can understand. Let's say the wine could be used for, as we'll see, for perfuming, or the oil could be used for fire, etc. If it's exposed, we can use it. You could also use it for perfuming. Just like if it's broken a little bit, whatever's left, most of it's just dripping out, you can use it, right? But if it's exposed to snakes, what are you going to use it for? You can't drink it. You can't. What are you going to do with wine? You can use it for perfume. But Tanya, if water was exposed to a snake, worried about the venom of the snake, you shouldn't spill them out in Rishus Harabim, right? Because a person might come there barefoot with a cut, and the venom might get into his leg and kill him. You certainly shouldn't use it for also for kneading cement. Again, because an animal, well, the other's born as a vice shouldn't use it to clean the house. Well, as you shouldn't feed your animals, you drink your animals with it. Below nobody else's animals, right? So the point is you can't use it for anything. Rashi says, interestingly, because maybe you'll slaughter the animal, the animal will drink, you'll slaughter the animal and eat from there, right? When they have all these when they know today that when the animals feed on all kinds of antibiotics and hormones and stuff like that, it eventually gets in. So you shouldn't do anything. So what are you going to do with this? So it's a for sure loss. So how can you give it away as truma? Besides the tummy part, we'll get to that. How can you give it away if it's a for sure loss? Since the Avram says there's a way to do it, you can filter it out. In other words, there's a way after the water or the liquid was exposed to snake venom, like a snake had gotten in there, you can filter it out. Tanakama says even if you filter it, you can't get it all out, and therefore it's still dangerous. If the two levels, and they had a strainer like a filter, there's like two levels, the upper level and lower level. That's only if the lower level was exposed. If the lower level was covered up, even though the upper level of this strainer was exposed, there's no problem with that. The venom of the snake, it's like a fungus or like a spongy material with soft, but it stays in its place, so you could filter it out. That's only if you didn't stir it. If you stirred it, usher, it's still forbidden. Even according to Mechem, you could put like some cloth on top of the vessel, on top of this barrel or jug or whatever, the shafile, and then slowly filter it out, pour the liquid in, and you can still filter it out. Okay, so the point is that whether it was broken, whether the barrel was broken, or whether it was exposed, it's not what we call a total loss, right? Because it's still tied up a little bit, and it's a slow loss, and therefore lechatchila you could give it. The lady can give it as trumas meiser. So the Gemara now says Moshe's kasher of Nehemiah. Mitamin, can you give truma from tamei? But Tanya, tormin min atamei al tamei. You can give truma tamei al tamei. Min atar al tor. Min atar al tamei. Avalo min atamei al tor. You can't give truma tamei on something which is tar. You can't give. So if you have good, pure produce, oil or wine or grains, whatever, you can't give something that's tamei on that. Nehemiah af min atamei al tamei lo yitir tram. They didn't even. The rabbis didn't allow you. In Meraisa you could. In Meraisa you could even give tamei al tar. But the rabbis said, no, you give even tamei al tar lo yitir litrum ela b'shal demai. Only if it's demai. Demai is something which is you bought from an amaretz. Most of them give trumas ma'aser, but it's a suffix, so they were matter in certain cases. Lo yitir ela b'shal demai. Achanam b'shal demai. We're talking about demai. When it's demai, they were matter tamei on tamei even from the Nehemiah. Amar Mar, u'b'shem lo yasik, and you could do that with what? With wine. You can do that. You can give trumas. You can give it. Why? Because it's mostly going to stay. And the question was, what about if it's venomous? You could also clean that out. So it's not so bad. You can use a perfume. With Shemen but you shouldn't do it with Shemen. You shouldn't give it because the Kohen's got a loss because he can use it for fire, for fuel. It says my Shemen the roy la because you can use it for fuel. Yainami roy lazilaf. It's also good for perfume, so you shouldn't do it. If you say it's going to be you're going to take the Kohen will have the Kohen that gets the trumas meiser will have a loss. You shouldn't do it l'chadchila. But if you did it, okay, but you shouldn't do it l'chadchila because there's a loss to the Kohen, whatever drips out. Well, by wine also, what's the problem? It's also roy for perfume, so therefore it's also a loss. It doesn't count for much. You can drink, let's say, a log of wine for a sella. That's the value of a log for drinking. With zalfin, if you use it for perfume, a log b'shnayim, the same log goes for $2. So it's worth even more when you're using it for perfuming. They used to sprinkle the wine on the smelly parts that just smell good. New wine. New wine isn't good for perfume. In other words, so therefore there's really no loss over here. This wine is not worth much. It's wine, so it's chayv to some meisers, give it, but it's not worth much. Not a big loss. It's new wine. So you could age it. You can't give it because once you give this trumas meiser, it's truma. You might come to tekola, and it's chayv. And if you didn't give the truma yet, then it's a chayv, and then it's tevel. And after you're mafresh, it's truma. So you might come to drink it. If you leave it around, then therefore we were worried about you might come to a mishap and come to this. So what about the shemen? You could say that also you might come to the tekola. So why by the shemen is it only a problem? You shouldn't do it because of the loss of the coin. What about the tekola? It's a manaf klimos. You put it in a dirty receptacle. So by shemen you can leave it in a shemen. You could also put it in a dirty receptacle so nobody's going to come to drink it. If you're using it for perfume, how can you put it in a dirty kli? Shemen, which is only used for fuel, for fire. So you don't care if it's in a dirty kli, right? But wine, which is going to be used for perfume, cannot be in a dirty kli. But takala atzma, this question, are you worried about takala by leaving it around? It's actually machlokas tanoy. It's Tanya chavashal yain shel truma. This became tamei. The Shami says, spill it all out. Tishbachakol, spill it all right. Don't leave it around. Maybe you'll use it for something else because you might come to drink. No, use it for perfume. You can leave it around, use it for perfume. You're not worried about the color. I will compromise the two. I'll go between Basil and Beishamai. The bias in the house, tasazilif. If it's in the house, you can use perfume. Basada, tishbachakol. If it's out in the field, there's no perfuming over there. Just spill it all out. Then we go like Beishamai. Some say b'yoshin if it's old wine, nasazilif because that's good for perfume. But chodesh if it's new wine, tishbachakol because it's not going to be used for perfume anyway. You might come to color. Omelo, they told Rabbi Shmuel Bar Yossi, ein achrosh lishis machros. That's the third opinion. You see, if Beis Shammai and Beis Shammai says the rules apply, whether it's in the field or in the house, these are the rules you got to spill out. And Beis Hillel would have said, no, whether it's in the house or in the field, you can keep it. And then Rabbi Shmuel said, well, in the house I'll go like Beis Shammai, out in the field I'll go like Beis Hillel. Or whatever. I'm sorry, in the field I'll go like Beis Shammai, in the house I'll go like Beis Hillel. Then you could have said that Rabbi Shmuel is giving opinion. It's 2 against 1 in the house. It's 2 against 1 in favor of Beis Hillel, and Beis Shammai it's 2 against 1 in the field. It's 2 against 1 for Beis Shammai's opinion in the field, meaning that Rabbi Shmuel is saying I'll go like Beis Hillel here, I'll go like Beis Shammai there. Right, then it's a machriya, like he's in between. He's like saying, okay, machriya meaning I will weigh it over. Machriya means you push it down, then it's 2 against 1. But over here, Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai didn't talk about the field or the house, so we don't know what their opinion is there. You're giving a third opinion. That's not achra. That's not like a 2 against 1 here, 2 against 1 there. You're just giving a third opinion. Beis Shammai says you always spill it out. Beis Hillel says you always use it as perfume. And you're saying it depends. In the house, you use it as perfume. In the field, you spill it out. That's a third opinion. That's not like Beis Shammai in the field or like Beis Hillel in the house. And therefore, that opinion doesn't count. But this whole idea of you're worried about a takala by leaving something around, that's a machlokes, a famous machlokes Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai. All right, we'll pick up here from the 2 dots tomorrow.
Yeah.
All right, have a good day.
100%. Yes.
It's true. It's true.